Hello and welcome to the first episode of Alan Writes. This will be an attempt to actually write while talking about writing. Uh, if you're a writer or if you know a writer, this is the process that we go through to put something down to the page. Now you'll notice that the first thing I've got going on is it's a blank piece of paper, essentially in Google. The first thing we'll need is a title, and I don't have one. Untitled. I'll put my name in there just because that's what you do. And if you don't know something, you don't have an idea what to call a character or what to call a certain thing, then by all means just slap a placeholder on it and move on. The important thing is that you get to the part of writing where you actually write. You can't. Most good changes happen in the editing phase, where people will get to editing and change things and alter them and make them better. Because the first draft is going to be unreadable for the most part. That's just the way it is. So you have to move on, get something on the page that you can fix, and get going. So we'll start off with I am cheating just a little. I have an outline of a story that I've been working on, a short story, because we only have so much time here. If you want to see more of that, there we go. Just freeze the program. I'm not going to linger on it much longer. All right. So we have a man who we call right now. He's Tom. Doesn't really matter. He could be male. He could be female. He could be anything. Anything but a cat or a dragon. I don't start stories with cats or dragons generally. So. Staggered through the door. Tom remembered being dead. Was much quieter than this. All right, so the background is that he's just been resurrected, so to speak, in the 25th century by science. There you go, science with a capital S. And it's the 25th century. He doesn't know what the hell's going on. He's been resurrected and shoved out the door. It was much quieter than this. It was a constant din, distant hum of electricity and people. To his raw ears. It's important in the beginning to build some sympathy with your, or at least perspective with your main character, because, well, it's important. People have to be related to it, and in this day and age, you will get a sentence or two before they decide to drop your story or not, and you've got to keep leading them on with how grand and unfolding it is and how interested they were going to be. And if you don't hook them in the beginning, you're probably not going to hook them at all. Let's see, into his raw ears. The robot, a dull gray mechanical construct. That's probably too fancy, but screw it, we'll do it for now. Him through a sleek metal doorway. Welcome to your life. The door snipped shut behind Tom, leaving him alone. Okay. So he's alone. He's been basically resurrected and then shoved off into a thing. We'll get to exactly why that is in a little bit. My notes will cover that somewhat. There have been plenty more that have been before him, so he's not unique in terms of his resurrection. It's just a thing they're doing. Society would rather forget that he existed at all. He's not going to be beneficial. He has no useful skills or knowledge at this point. It's just an obligation, I should say. It was. Now, naturally, he doesn't know anything about this at the beginning, and we'll tease that out as we go along. At least that's the plan. We'll see where the plan goes. All right. Leaving him alone. It was quiet. The quiet startled him. If I use too quiet, it's going to be strange. The quiet startled him. Then hum began again. Emanating, and my spelling's terrible. I don't care. This is why you use word processing programs. So I don't have to concentrate so much on the spelling or go look up the spelling. I just have to click on it and go, close enough. Again, we can fix this in edit. All right. From the walls, the floor, and the ceiling. From all over. From all over. Even the door. Yep, doorknob, not a door noob. All right. So, this apparently the future, and it was confusing. You should have expected that. All right. Apparently, I'm writing this. Yeah, it's all going to be third person, their point of view, as close as I can get to seeing their thoughts. But it's going to be Tom's perspective, which is important later because not everything comes out. We're learning the world as he learns it, and that's important for perspective and not to throw too much stuff at the reader. You should have expected that. It was 5 days after he'd been killed in a car accident. Somewhere along Route 76. I will get a route. I will look at some maps later on. We'll figure that out, where exactly he came from, and so on. It's not really important now. Again, we're going to fix this in edit. After he'd apparently been killed. Must have been a quick one. Didn't remember it. I don't want him to remember that sort of trauma of dying. That gets in the way of the story. Otherwise, this is a story about him dealing with trauma of dying 5 centuries from, and it's a different story than the one I want to tell. At least the one that I think I want to tell. Maybe that's actually the story that I end up focused on, because that's the way it works with writing. You're never quite sure where you're going. Even if I have a lot of things outlined, they are an outline. I don't have to follow it if I don't feel like it. If I want to go off on a tangent, I go off on a tangent. The important thing, get it on the page, and then you can I'll muse about it later. You can fix things, move things around, change things as you prefer. That's because he didn't remember it. That was good. Learned things were bad enough. All right. So what's he wearing? What's he the thin robe they tossed to him. Barely kept him warm. The cold leaking through. with every swish of the cloth. Was it cloth? It's still cotton or wool or spandex. You didn't know. Know anything. Crap. And that's going to be my character hook, where we're like, well, now we're going to root for you to frickin' figure things out. All right. I'm going to toss back up here for a little bit. Remember being dead, and it was much quieter than this. We're starting with sounds. His raw ears. A distant hum of electricity that tickled his tongue. And it tickled his tongue. Able to see just hallways. And a dull gray mechanical construct. Mechanical robot, that all but. Welcome to your life, it said. All right. So now we have to figure out what the apartment looks like. Let's assume it's something of a stacker. It's kind of your generic apartment that people assume that the society assumes that you're going to decorate it in some way with whatever is given to you. We'll get to the economics of the system of the 25th century in this story. We'll touch upon it anyway. Obviously, we don't go into detail. This is not an economic treatise of how futuristic societies will work. It's a little beyond this particular video, and we're already 12 minutes in. So here we go. He didn't know anything. Crap. There wasn't of anything he's seen. That's boring. That's factually true, but it's also boring. What we're going to talk about is that the place was empty. Just one big room with one big machine in it. The machine had color, a bright blue splotch that said, oh, what was I going to call it? Iconic coffee. Yeah, there we go. That practically shouted. So, every once in a while you'll come up with ideas that you'll want to get down to paper or get down to an outline in some way so that you can capture them. If you let them if you think that you can remember it later, well, let me give you some advice. You probably can't. You'll at least need a hint to go on, and maybe you'll even build on that. For example, Iconic Coffee was built on a lot of different ideas I had for what this coffee machine is going to look like. It's not just a coffee machine, obviously. It's a little more than that. It's a computer system, and it is going to be the first thing that's actually going to talk to Tom in a meaningful way. Had color though. That practically shouted Iconic Coffee. Here we go. All right. There were two familiar nozzles and a shelf holding a cup. It was somehow a relief for him. Hello, it said to him. And okay, so now how is it going to speak? I want it to be friendly, but not overly so. It's not your corporate friend trying to sell you a thing. And we'll get to the economics behind the story eventually. It said to him in tempered tones, like a voice Like an untuned voice synthesizer. Synthesize, I don't care. Spell check, take me away. All right, there we go. See, that's what I want. Like an untuned synthesizer. There we go. Hello, Tom replied, and found his throat tight because he hasn't used it yet. His voice gonna creak. Oh, the machine asked. And from here on in, we're going to call it the coughing machine because that's easy. And it tells you directly who's talking, and it tells you what it is, and it tells you that it's a machine. That's about as great a characterization as we go. I might refer to it as iconic coffee at some point again, but only when it's that's important. Because right now, Tom, it's a familiar coffee machine, and it's something he can hold on to. That's awfully rude of them. Yeah. Tom stared at the machine. Its tone. There was. Stared at the machine. A long moment. There's nowhere to sit. And he really wanted. There was nowhere to sit but the floor. And his legs weak. Alright, so his legs are feeling weak, and so he sat on the floor. And looked up at the nozzles. Now, why did they do that? So we've begun the question and answer phase rather than the introduction thing. Should Tom ask the machine who it is? No, I think he just refers to it as a machine, or thinks it's a machine, or what have you. That's important. Why did they do that? They're obligated. And when it added the social contract requires that all, I think they're called engrams in the brain, or your lattice-like structure of neuropathy. Just making stuff up here. All encoded engrams. Engrams are entitled to at least one lifetime worth of real space activity. Now, that's all well and true, and that's a lot of sci-fi gobbledygook, but let's see where we uncork it. What? You were stored in a pattern. Matrix 4. Let's see. 500 years. 512 years. Because round numbers are kind of weird. Well, they look weird on paper. Everyone wants it to be odd, because most of the time it is. Although, if you look in reality, sometimes it isn't. Things are naturally rounded all the time. Let's see. Stored in a pattern matrix for, let's see, 512 years. It was only recently that technology advanced to the point where full brain reconstruction was viable. Now that brings up an interesting point, doesn't it? Total brain reconstruction means that you can reconstruct an engram. So you can take an engram from somebody's brain, you can digitize it, and then you can put it into another brain that you can reconstruct. People can now begin to duplicate themselves. They are effectively immortal. This is actually a sea change in society. So that needs to be put there. Sea change in society. People can live forever if they can manage their engrams properly. Which means those with power become more powerful and effectively immortal, which is going to be interesting with society. Again, the point where the full brain reconstruction was viable. You can pause if you like. Can I? Tom asked. It seemed unlikely. Of course you... The machine paused. Soft blue light, and it's going to be soft blue light because it's a pleasing light. People like the color blue. A soft blue light. Color speed. Swam over him. Then you have no implants. Yeah? No cybernetics. No augmented biosystems. You are completely human. Yeah? There came that pause again. Whenever it pauses, it's thinking. And it's pretty deep thinking, to be honest. Because it's essentially a supercomputer. And we'll get to that soon enough. Let's see. Then there came that pause again. That is rare. Less than 100 million opt out of. Completely opt out of enhancement. Alright, there we go. Completely opt out of enhancement. Less than 1 in 100 million completely opt out of enhancement. So the question is, what's the population of Earth? Let's go with around 10 billion. So we're looking at, there are, what, 10... There are 100 people like him in the world. And it's exceedingly rare. What sort of enhancement? The kind come in pills. there's still that. Constructs and cybernetic. There's still that. But people at a minimum, humans specifically, humans at a minimum, usually opt for at least an interface. We need an interface because you'd have to interface with various computers. It'd be kind of like a remote way to access everything from your computer to your car to your apartment. It might also give you some bit of augmented reality so that you can make things seen as an overlay so that you can better understand it, or just to pretty things up. For at least an interface, a remote interface. A remote interface. Nearly everything. By that, car, home, computer, tables, chairs, kitchens. Now here's an interesting bit. The machine is essentially predicting his train of thought, which should give a hint that it's not entirely just a machine. It's not simply a computer. This is more than just a machine. It's kind of alive. By kind of alive, I mean it is alive. It can think for itself. It can do thought processes. And that'll be important later, because in this future they've actually kind of dumbed down a lot of things because they feared the singularity. And we'll get to the singularity, I don't know, next episode if there's another episode. If people actually like this video, we'll see. Table included. A chair rose up for the side. Top. Simple, straight-backed, everyday chair. A simple, straight-back, everyday chair that, now, do I want it to lift him up underneath? I don't think that was too startling. Yeah, let's just go with everyday chair. That he got up. Can we do a table? Kitchen? No, a study of some kind. I need to know what's going on and how to do. He said, okay, a study. Machine asked. You usually have a in your study? I went to college. Replied. Had to rack his brain. A long time ago. Alright, so we've already fixed his age. He's about 22, something like that. And 22, 25, let's call him 25. He's in the midst of his 20s. He sort of knows what he wants to do. He got hit in a car accident and taken down. That'll give him the perspective that we're doing. So he's 25, or with these, if it's 512, that's 537 nonlinear age. Okay, and that's our half-hour mark. I am going to call it here for the session, but as you can see, we've just gotten, that was a page and a third of a short story. And this is what writers do. We sit down and we fill the page with stuff, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. We fix what doesn't work and we keep what does. Eventually, with time and effort, we wrap things up and we put it out there for people to read. There's other aspects of that, obviously editing and critiquing and incorporating comments and the like is a very important process of this. If you have any questions, I'm just using Google Docs because, again, I can do collaborative stuff there very easily. It's a very useful program, and it's free in the current version that I'm using, and that's all to the good. There we go. This has been the first episode of Alan Writes. I hope you have enjoyed it. Have a good day.